Stop. Look at the person sitting next to you. Do you really know who they are? Marcus Thorne thought he did. He thought his wife Elena was nothing more than a timid housewife, a woman lucky to be married to a rising real estate tycoon like him. He brought his mistress into their home, let her mock Elena's clothes, and even forced his wife to serve them drinks like a maid in her own dining room. Marcus laughed, thinking he held all the cards, but he forgot one tiny fatal detail. The mansion they were standing in, the company he ran. He didn't own any of it. She did. And tonight the lease is up. The invitation on the heavy mahogany desk was embossed with gold leaf, the 50th anniversary gala of the Sterling Vance Hotel Group. It was the most anticipated event of the year in Manhattan's social calendar. Elena Thorne stared at the card, her fingers tracing the raised lettering. She stood in the center of the master bedroom of the penthouse suite at the Azure Skyline, a property overlooking Central Park. The room was silent, save for the hum of the city far below. She wore a simple slate-gray dress, elegant but intentionally understated. It was the kind of dress designed to blend into the wallpaper to make the wearer invisible. "Are you still staring at that?" The voice cut through the silence like a whip. Marcus Thorne walked out of the walk-in closet, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Armani tuxedo. At 42, Marcus was the picture of corporate success, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver-flecked hair that gave him a distinguished air. He was the CEO of Sterling Vance, the face of the company, the man on the cover of Forbes last month. Elena placed the invitation down. "I was just thinking, Marcus, it's a big night. Maybe I should wear the emerald necklace, the one my grandmother left me." Marcus laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a dry, dismissive bark. He walked over to the mirror, admiring his own jawline, completely ignoring her reflection standing just behind him. "The emeralds, don't be ridiculous, Elena," he said, smoothing his lapels. "This is a modern gala for the investors, not a costume party for washed-up librarians. Stick to the pearls. They're quaint. Like you." He turned around, his eyes scanning her up and down with a look of mild disappointment. "And try to stay out of the photos tonight, all right? The board is looking for a fresh, dynamic image. You look tired. It reflects poorly on me." Elena lowered her gaze, hiding the sudden flash of cold fire in her eyes. "I look tired because I stayed up all night reviewing the quarterly financial reports you left on the desk," she said softly. "I didn't ask you to do that," Marcus snapped, grabbing his Rolex from the dresser. "I have a team for that. I have Jessica for that. You wouldn't understand the complexities of international hospitality assets anyway. You just focus on whatever it is you do." Gardening charity teas. He didn't wait for an answer. He never did. The truth was, Marcus had no idea what Elena did. For the last 7 years of their marriage, he had constructed a narrative in his head that Elena was a simple country girl he had rescued from a dusty town in Nebraska. He believed she was content living off his allowance, decorating his houses and warming his bed. He didn't know that Elena was actually Elena Sterling Vance, the granddaughter of Arthur Sterling, the founder of the very empire Marcus was currently managing. When they met, Elena had used her mother's maiden name to avoid gold diggers. She had fallen in love with Marcus's drive, his ambition. She had quietly maneuvered him into the CEO position from the shadows, using her proxy lawyers to guide the board's decisions. She had given him the world anonymously, and in return, he had given her humiliation. "Car's downstairs," Marcus said, checking his phone. A smile, one Elena hadn't seen directed at her in years, lit up his face as he read a text message. "I have to pick up Jessica on the way. She's nervous about her presentation." Jessica. Elena repeated the name, the taste of it bitter on her tongue. Jessica Miller, the 26-year-old vice president of branding. She was stunning, ambitious, and completely unqualified. She was also sleeping with Marcus. Elena had known for 6 months. She had seen the credit card bills for jewelry stores in Paris, the business trips to Cabo, where there was no business being done. "Yes, Jessica," Marcus said defensively, narrowing his eyes. She's a vital part of the company, Elena. Try to be nice to her tonight. She's been under a lot of stress helping me save this company while you sit here in luxury." He walked out the door without a backward glance. Elena stood alone in the silence. She walked over to the safe, hidden behind a painting of the Italian coast. She punched in the code her late father's birthday, and the heavy steel door swung open. Inside there were no jewels, just a single thick legal document bound in blue leather. The title page read, "The Sterling Trust, Sole Beneficiary and Owner Transfer Deed." She ran her hand over the document. For years she had kept this hidden to protect Marcus's ego, to let him feel like the king of the castle. But kings who abuse their queens eventually lose their heads. "Nice to her," Elena whispered to the empty room. A terrifyingly calm smile spread across her face. "Oh, I'll be very nice to her, Marcus. I'll give her exactly what she deserves." She closed the safe, grabbed her clutch, and walked out. The invisible wife was going to war. The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was transformed into a shimmering palace of gold and glass. Waiters in white gloves moved like ghosts through the crowd of Manhattan's elite senators, tech billionaires, and old money heirs. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Marcus entered the room like he owned it. Flashbulbs popped as he stepped onto the red carpet, but he wasn't holding Elena's hand. Hanging onto his arm, beaming at the cameras, was Jessica. She was impossible to miss. While the dress code was black tie elegant, Jessica was wearing a dress that screamed for attention, a fire-engine red backless gown with a slit that went up to her hip. It was a stunning dress, but entirely inappropriate for a corporate gala. It was a declaration of war against subtlety. Elena walked 3 steps behind them. The photographers ignored her, assuming she was an assistant or a distant relative. Marcus over here," a reporter from the New York Times shouted. "Tell us about the expansion into Dubai." Marcus struck a pose, puffing out his chest. "It's going to be revolutionary. Under my leadership, Sterling Vance is entering a new era. An era of youth and vigor." He squeezed Jessica's waist visibly. Elena watched from the sidelines, her hands clasped politely in front of her. She saw the way the older board members exchanged looks. Mr. Henderson, the chairman of the board, and the only person in the room who knew Elena's true identity, caught her eye from across the room. He looked furious on her behalf. Elena gave him a microscopic shake of her head. "Not yet." They moved into the main hall. Marcus finally acknowledged Elena's presence when they reached their VIP table. "Elena, sit there." He pointed to a chair at the far end of the table near the kitchen service door. "Jessica needs to sit next to me to discuss the talking points for my speech." "Of course," Elena said, her voice smooth. "I wouldn't want to interrupt business." Jessica giggled, a sound like breaking glass. She looked at Elena with faux sympathy. "Oh, Mrs. Thorne, you look comfortable. That dress is so practical. Is it vintage? Like really vintage?" "It's Dior," Elena said simply. "Oh, must be an outlet piece." Jessica smirked, turning her back to Elena to whisper something in Marcus's ear. Marcus threw his head back and laughed, his hand lingering on Jessica's bare shoulder. The humiliation was public and visceral. People at the neighboring tables, associates of Marcus, wives of his competitors, were watching. Some looked pitying, others looked amused. Poor Elena Thorne, their eyes said. The dowdy wife about to be traded in for a newer model. A waiter approached with a tray of vintage Dom Perignon. Marcus took 2 flutes, one for himself, one for Jessica. He didn't take one for Elena. "To us," Marcus toasted, clinking his glass against Jessica's. "To the future of Sterling Vance." "To the future," Jessica cooed. Then she accidentally tilted her glass. The sticky golden champagne cascaded over the edge of the table, splashing directly onto Elena's lap. "Oh my God!" Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in a performance that wouldn't have convinced a toddler. "I am so clumsy, Marcus. Look what I did to her. Whatever that fabric is." Elena stood up quickly, the cold liquid soaking through to her skin. The room went quiet. Everyone was watching. Marcus didn't apologize. He didn't offer a napkin. He sighed, looking annoyed. "Jessica, be careful. That's expensive carpet." He looked at his wife with disdain. "Elena, for God's sake. You're making a scene. Go to the restroom and clean yourself up. You smell like a brewery." Elena stood frozen. The disrespect was absolute. He was worried about the hotel carpet, not his wife. "Well," Jessica said, her eyes dancing with malice. "Go on. Unless you want me to call a maid to help you, you'd probably get along great with them." Elena looked at Jessica. Then she looked at Marcus. "I'll handle it," Elena said. She turned and walked toward the restrooms, but she didn't go inside. Instead, she walked past the restrooms down a service corridor and stopped in front of a security door marked Private Hotel Management Only. She tapped a code into the keypad. The light turned green. Inside the office, the general manager of the Pierre Hotel, a stern Frenchman named Monsieur Laurent, was reviewing schedules. When he saw Elena enter, he didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask her to leave. He stood up immediately, his face draining of color. He buttoned his jacket and bowed deeply. "Madame Sterling," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "we were not expecting you back here. Is everything to your satisfaction?" Elena walked over to his desk, dripping champagne onto his pristine floor. She didn't care. "No, Laurent, it isn't," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing all the timid warmth she used with Marcus. "Pull up the security feed for the grand ballroom, and get me the microphone frequency for the main stage. I think it's time I gave a speech." Laurent nodded, frantically typing on his keyboard. "Of course, madame. Immediately." Elena watched the monitor. On the screen, Marcus was laughing, feeding a canapé to Jessica. He looked like a king. "Enjoy it, Marcus," she whispered. "It's your last meal." The office of Monsieur Laurent was soundproof, a vacuum of silence compared to the roar of the gala outside. But inside Elena's mind, a storm was raging. She stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the private dressing suite adjacent to the manager's office, a room reserved for visiting royalty and heads of state. She looked at her reflection. The slate-gray dress was ruin-stained dark with the sticky residue of expensive champagne. It clung to her skin, cold and humiliating. But as she stared into her own eyes, she didn't see the poor wife anymore. She saw Arthur Sterling's granddaughter. She saw the woman who had graduated top of her class at Wharton under a pseudonym. She saw the predator who had been playing prey. "Madame," Laurent's voice came from the doorway, soft and trembling. "I have retrieved it from the vault. The Midnight Collection. It was your grandmother's design, never released." He walked in holding a garment bag like it contained holy relics. He unzipped it. Inside was a gown of pure vantablack silk. It wasn't just a dress, it was a weapon, strapless with a bodice structured like armor and a skirt that flowed like spilled ink. It came with a necklace, not pearls and not emeralds. Diamonds. A choker of raw, uncut diamonds that looked more like jagged ice than jewelry. "Burn the gray dress," Elena said, her voice devoid of emotion. "And send the bill for this room to Mr. Thorne's personal account. Label it Cleaning Services. Consider it done, madame." As Elena changed, the transformation was physical. She washed the champagne from her skin, scrubbing until she was raw. She slicked her hair back severe and sharp, revealing the high cheekbones she usually hid behind soft waves. She applied a dark, blood-red lipstick. She wasn't dressing to look beautiful for her husband. She was dressing for a funeral. His. Meanwhile, back in the grand ballroom, the atmosphere at the VIP table had shifted, though Marcus was too intoxicated by his own ego to notice. "I think she actually left." Jessica laughed, swirling the olive in her martini. She had taken Elena's seat, literally moving her place card aside to sit closer to Marcus. "God, she's so fragile. How have you dealt with her for 7 years?" Marcus leaned back, loosening his bow tie slightly. The adrenaline of the night, the flashbulbs, and the alcohol made him feel invincible. "It wasn't easy, Jess. I needed a stable home life while I built the empire. She was convenient. Like a comfortable piece of furniture you don't mind scratching up a bit. Mr. Henderson, the chairman of the board, was sitting 2 seats away. He was an old man, 70 years of age, with eyes like a hawk. He had been watching the interaction with a deepening scowl. He set his fork down with a deliberate clink. "Marcus," Henderson rumbled. His voice carried the weight of old money. "You are celebrating prematurely. The quarterly vote is tonight. The mysterious trustee who holds the majority share has not yet cast their proxy vote." Marcus waved a dismissive hand. "Henderson, you worry too much. The trustee always votes with the board. Why wouldn't they? I've doubled the stock price. Whoever sits behind that blind trust, probably some senile old cousin of the Sterlings living in Switzerland, just wants their dividends. They don't care if I have a mistress or if I spill a drink on my wife." "Decency matters, Marcus," Henderson said coldly. "Character matters, especially to the Sterling family legacy." "The Sterling legacy is dead," Marcus sneered, glancing at Jessica. "It's the Thorn era now. In fact, I'm going to announce the rebranding tonight. Thorn International. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Jessica squealed, grabbing his bicep. "Oh my God, Marcus, you didn't tell me you were doing it tonight." "Surprise," Marcus winked. "And I'm appointing you as the chief creative officer for the rebrand, effective immediately." Henderson went pale. "You cannot do that without board approval, and you certainly cannot rename the company without the trustee's signature." "Watch me." Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. The lights in the ballroom were dimming. The orchestra stopped playing. A spotlight hit the center stage. "That's my cue." Marcus walked toward the stage, the applause beginning to ripple through the room. He felt like a god. He didn't see the service door open in the shadows behind the stage. He didn't see the figure in black silk stepping into the wings, watching him like a spider watching a fly struggle in the web. The podium was made of lucite and gold. Marcus gripped it with both hands, beaming out at the sea of faces. 500 of the most powerful people in the industry were looking at him. "Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, friends," Marcus began, his voice smooth, practiced. "Tonight is a celebration, but it is also a funeral." A murmur of confusion went through the crowd. Marcus paused for effect. He loved this part. "We are saying goodbye to the past," he continued, his voice rising. "For 50 years the Sterling name has been on these hotels, but Arthur Sterling was a man of the past. He didn't understand the modern world. He didn't understand that luxury is about power, not just service." In the wings, Elena stood next to the sound technician. She watched Marcus desecrate her grandfather's memory. Her hand hovered over the technician's mixing console. "I have a surprise for you all," Marcus announced. "Behind me on the screen you will see the future." He gestured to the massive LED screen behind him. It was supposed to show the new Thorn International logo, a sharp, aggressive T in gold. Marcus clicked the remote in his hand. The screen didn't change. He frowned and clicked it again. "Technical difficulties." He chuckled nervously. "One moment." Suddenly the screen flickered. But it wasn't a logo. It was a video file. The audio boomed through the massive ballroom speakers, clearer and louder than Marcus's microphone. She was convenient. "Like a comfortable piece of furniture you don't mind scratching up a bit," the crowd gasped. It was Marcus's voice. The video was grainy security footage from 30 minutes ago at the VIP table. Marcus froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. He looked around wildly. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But the video continued. "Video, the Sterling legacy is dead. It's the Thorn era now. I'm appointing you as Chief Creative Officer, effective immediately." Then the video cut to Jessica's giggling face. She's probably crying in the bathroom. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. It was the kind of silence that precedes a catastrophe. People were whispering, pointing. Jessica, still sitting at the table, looked like she wanted to dissolve into the floor. She covered her face with her hands. Marcus shouted into the mic, "This is a hack security. We have been hacked. Cut the feed." It's not a hack, Marcus. The voice cut through his panic like a blade. It wasn't coming from the video. It was coming from the stage. From the shadows of stage left, Elena stepped out. The spotlight operator, seemingly acting on previous orders, swung the beam away from Marcus and onto her. The gasp from the audience was audible. This wasn't the mousy woman in the gray dress. This was a vision in black silk and diamonds. She looked 10 feet tall. She walked to the center of the stage, her heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood, a slow, deliberate countdown. She didn't need a handheld microphone. She was wearing a discreet lapel mic that Laurent had rigged for her. "Elena," Marcus whispered, his face draining of color. "What are you doing? Get off the stage. You're embarrassing me." Elena ignored him. She turned to the audience. She stood with perfect posture, her chin high, radiating an icy regality that made Marcus look like a sweating, petulant child beside her. "Good evening," Elena said. Her voice was calm, commanding. "My husband seems to be confused about the ownership structure of this company. I thought it best to clarify things before he embarrasses himself further." "Elena, I swear to God," Marcus hissed, stepping toward her, his hand raised as if to grab her arm. "Don't touch me," she said. She didn't shout. She didn't flinch. She just stated it as a fact. And for the first time in his life, Marcus was afraid of her. He stopped. Elena looked at the crowd. Marcus spoke of the mysterious trustee who owns 60% of this company, the one he claims is a senile old relative in Switzerland. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the blue leather-bound document she had taken from the safe. She held it up. "The Sterling Trust was established by my grandfather, Arthur Sterling, to ensure that his company never fell into the hands of those who lack integrity, those who treat loyalty like furniture." She turned to Marcus, her eyes locking onto his. "I am not just Elena Thorne. My name is Elena Sterling. I am the sole beneficiary of the Sterling Trust. I am the chairman of the holding company, and Marcus—" She smiled a terrifying, beautiful smile. "I am your boss." The crowd erupted. It was pandemonium. Reporters were sprinting toward the stage. Flashes were blinding. Marcus stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "No. No, that's impossible. You clip coupons. You garden. You're you. I played the role you needed me to play to see who you really were." Elena said, her voice amplified so everyone could hear every syllable. "I gave you the CEO title. I approved your salary raises. I signed off on your corporate card expenses, including the $40,000 you spent on Cartier bracelets for Miss Miller last month." She pointed to Jessica in the audience. The spotlight swiveled to the mistress, pinning her to her chair like a criminal in an interrogation room. "But tonight," Elena continued, turning back to the frozen man beside her, "I am afraid your performance review is in. And Marcus, it's not looking good." "Elena, wait," Marcus stammered, sweat pouring down his forehead. He tried to switch to his charming persona, the one he used to manipulate her for years. He smiled weakly. "Honey, look, we can talk about this. At home, just you and me. I love you. You know I love you. This is just stress. We can fix this." Elena laughed. It was a genuine laugh, light and airy, which made it all the more chilling. "Fix this? Oh, Marcus, we are way past fixing this." She signaled to the AV booth. "Roll the next clip." The screen behind them changed again. This wasn't security footage. It was a document. A complex legal document titled Project Vulture. "You see," Elena narrated, pacing around Marcus like a shark. "Marcus didn't just cheat on me. He tried to sell the company. He has been in secret talks with our biggest competitor, the Omni Group, to sell off the Sterling historic properties for strip mining and quick cash. He planned to liquidate my grandfather's legacy and run off with the commission." She turned to him. "You thought you were so clever hiding the emails in a hidden server, but you forgot one thing. Who pays for the servers, Marcus? I do." Marcus looked at the screen. It showed his signature on a preliminary intent to sell document. It was treason against the company. It was professional suicide. Mr. Henderson stood up at the VIP table. "Is this true?" he roared, his face purple with rage. Marcus couldn't speak. He was shaking. Elena leaned into the microphone, her voice dropping to a whisper that echoed through the hall. "You wanted a twist, Marcus. You wanted drama. Here it is." She snapped her fingers. From the side of the stage, 4 men in dark suits walked out. They weren't hotel security. They were federal agents. "Marcus Thorne," one of the agents said, stepping up to the podium. "We have a warrant for your arrest for corporate embezzlement, insider trading, and fraud." Elena stepped back, smoothing her silk skirt. "Happy anniversary, darling." The silence that followed the agent's declaration was not empty. It was heavy, suffocating, displacing the air in the room. It pressed against the eardrums of every guest in the Pierre Hotel's grand ballroom. Marcus Thorne stood frozen, his hands hovering in the air as if he were conducting an invisible orchestra. His eyes, usually sharp with arrogance, were now wide and glassy, darting between the federal agents and his wife. He looked like a man trying to wake up from a nightmare, unable to comprehend that the monster in the dream was actually the woman he had ignored for 7 years. "This is a mistake," Marcus croaked. His voice, stripped of its amplification, sounded pathetic and small in the cavernous room. "Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of this company. You can't touch me." The lead agent, a man with a face like carved granite named Special Agent Miller, didn't blink. He didn't offer a polite smile. He simply reached for his belt. "Marcus Thorne, turn around and place your hands behind your back," Miller said. The tone was conversational, which made it all the more terrifying. "Elena," Marcus screamed, pivoting toward her. The movement was erratic, desperate. Tell them to stop! This is insane! You're taking a joke too far." The merger was just an idea. I was doing it for us, to get us cash for the vacation home in Como. I was going to surprise you." Elena stood 5 feet away, the spotlight still catching the diamonds at her throat. They glittered like shards of ice. She watched him with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. "For us," Elena repeated softly, though in the dead silence her voice carried to the front rows. "Marcus, you listed the beneficiary of the offshore account for the sales commission as JM Consulting. That's Jessica Miller Consulting." She tilted her head slightly. "You were selling my grandfather's legacy to buy her a life, not me." Marcus opened his mouth to lie again, but the metal clicked. Snick. The sound of handcuffs tightening around wrists is distinct. It is a mechanical final sound. It severed Marcus from the world of the elite instantly. 1 second he was a tycoon in a tuxedo, the next he was a prisoner. As the agent shoved Marcus forward, forcing his head down to protect it, a courtesy he didn't deserve, he passed by the edge of the stage where the VIP table sat. He looked for an ally. He looked for Mr. Henderson. The chairman of the board stood with his arms crossed, his face a mask of disgust. As Marcus was dragged past, Henderson didn't look away. He poured the remainder of his wine onto the floor, a symbolic gesture of waste. "You are a disgrace to the uniform," Henderson muttered. Marcus was hauled down the center aisle, the same red carpet he had strutted down 20 minutes earlier. The photographers, recovering from their shock, went into a frenzy. The flashes were like lightning strikes, illuminating Marcus's sweaty, terrified face. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Vanity Fair. They were all getting the shot of the decade, the fall of the House of Thorne. Elena remained on stage until the door swung shut behind him. Only when the heavy thud of the exit doors echoed through the hall did she move. She signaled to the AV booth. The lights in the ballroom rose to a soft, warm glow, banishing the harsh interrogation spotlight. "Please," Elena said into her lapel mic, her voice gracious and calm, the perfect hostess once again. "Do not let this unfortunate business interrupt the evening. The open bar will remain available until midnight. The orchestra, if you please." She gestured to the band. The conductor, shaking slightly, raised his baton. The strains of a waltz began to float through the tension. Elena descended the stairs from the stage. She didn't walk, she glided. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. People who had looked through her for years, who had treated her like furniture, now bowed their heads or offered breathless congratulations. Mrs. Thorne? I mean, Ms. Sterling. Brilliant speech. Elena, darling, you look ravishing. We must do lunch. I always knew he was no good for you, Elena. She offered them thin, non-committal smiles. She knew these people. They were vultures. They feasted on power, and she was the new carcass. But she had no time for them. She had one more loose end to tie. Elena's eyes scanned the room. The red dress. It was a beacon of panic in the sea of black tuxedos. Jessica Miller was trying to make herself small. She was edging toward the side exit, clutching her clutch so hard her knuckles were white. Her mascara was beginning to smudge, ruining the perfection she had spent hours curating. She looked like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes, caught in the act of stealing. Elena changed her trajectory. She moved toward the side exit, cutting off Jessica's escape route. Jessica saw her coming. She froze. For a second, a flash of the old arrogance flickered in her eyes, the instinct to sneer at the dowdy wife. But then she remembered the FBI agents. She remembered the video. She remembered that Elena owned the building she was standing in. Jessica stopped. She took a breath, plastered a trembling, tragic smile on her face, and decided to play the victim. Elena? Jessica gasped, rushing forward as if to hug her. Oh my God. Elena, I am so glad you're okay. Can you believe him? He lied to me too. I had no idea I'm a victim here. Elena stopped 3 feet away. She didn't raise a hand. She just looked at Jessica's outstretched arms until Jessica awkwardly dropped them. A victim? Elena asked. Her voice was low, intimate. Is that the narrative, Jessica? The poor young intern swept up by the powerful CEO? Yes. Jessica nodded frantically, tears welling up in her eyes. He told me you were separated. He told me the marriage was a sham. He forced me to sign those papers. I was scared of him, Elena. You have to believe me. Women have to stick together, right? Elena let out a soft sigh. She reached into the pocket of her silk gown, a hidden pocket designed for utility, and pulled out her phone. Women do stick together, Jessica. But you aren't a woman. You're a parasite. Elena tapped the screen and held it up. It wasn't a video this time. It was a screenshot of a text thread. Jessica. To Marcus. God, she's so pathetic. Did you see her trying to fix my drink? She looks like a maid. Hurry up and divorce the cow so we can kick her out of the penthouse. I want to turn her sewing room into a yoga studio. Jessica's face went ash gray. The sisterhood defense evaporated instantly. I read your texts, Jessica. Elena said, her voice devoid of anger, which made it worse. I read them while you were sleeping in my bed. I read them while you were eating the dinner I cooked. You weren't coerced. You weren't tricked. You were impatient. You wanted my life. You wanted my house. You wanted my name. Jessica stammered, taking a step back. I was drunk when I wrote that. It was a joke. And the corporate theft? Elena asked, taking a step forward for every step Jessica took back. Was that a joke? You accepted a salary of $250,000 a year for a job that didn't exist. You charged personal vacations to the company expense account. That's not adultery, Jessica. That's embezzlement. That's a federal crime. Jessica hit the wall. Literally, her back pressed against the silk wallpaper of the ballroom. She looked around for help, but no one was coming. The circle of socialites around them had widened, watching the execution with gleeful fascination. Please, Jessica whispered, the arrogance finally dead. Please don't send me to jail. I'm 26. My life will be over. I'll do anything. I'll leave New York. I'll never speak to Marcus again. Elena studied her. She looked at the red dress, the expensive jewelry, the desperate clawing need for status. "I'm not going to send you to jail, Jessica," Elena said. Jessica let out a sob of relief. "Oh, thank you. Thank you, Elena. You're a saint." "Jail is too easy," Elena continued, cutting her off. "Marcus is going to jail. He needs a cage. You need the real world." Elena signaled to a security guard who had been waiting in the wings. It was the head of security, a massive man named Mr. Graves. "Mr. Graves," Elena said, "please escort Miss Miller off the premises." "With pleasure, ma'am." "Wait," Elena added. "She is currently wearing company property." Jessica's eyes widened. "What?" "The earrings," Elena said, pointing to the diamond drops in Jessica's ears. "Bought with the corporate card 3 weeks ago, invoice number 4092, and the bracelet, and the dress." "The dress!" Jessica shrieked, clutching her chest. "You can't be serious! I'm naked underneath!" "The dress was charged to the event staging budget," Elena said coldly. "It belongs to Sterling Vance. You are stealing." She looked at Mr. Graves. "Give her a tablecloth from the service station. I want every item bought with my money returned. Now." "You can't do this," Jessica screamed as Mr. Graves grabbed her arm. "This is humiliating. People are watching." Elena leaned in close, her lips inches from Jessica's ear. "Humiliation is a teacher, Jessica. I learned that from you. Tonight class is in session." She pulled back and nodded to the guard. "Get her out of my sight. And Graves, make sure she is banned from every Sterling Vance property globally. If she tries to check into a Motel 6 we own in Idaho, I want the system to flag her." "No, Marcus, help me," Jessica screamed as she was dragged away, struggling, her red dress a stark contrast to the white tablecloth she was eventually forced to wrap around herself in the lobby. Elena watched her go. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Monsieur Laurent, the hotel manager. He held a glass of water on a silver tray. "Madam," he said softly, "are you all right?" Elena took the water. Her hand wasn't shaking. "I'm fine, Laurent," she said. She took a sip, the cool liquid washing away the taste of the toxicity she had just expelled. "Actually, I'm better than fine. I'm hungry." "Shall I have the chef prepare the lobster?" "No." Elena smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had worn in years. "I want a burger. A cheeseburger. Rare. And bring it to the boardroom. I have a meeting with the board of directors in 10 minutes. "The boardroom, madame?" "Yes," Elena said, turning to look at the stunned group of old men, the board, who were huddled in the corner looking terrified. "I just fired the CEO," Elena said, smoothing her black silk skirt. "I think it's time I interviewed for the position." The elevator ride from the ballroom to the top floor took exactly 45 seconds. For Elena, it was a decompression chamber. She watched the numbers climb on the digital display on 30, 40, leaving the noise, the perfume, and the shattered ego of her husband far below. Monsieur Laurent stood silently beside her, holding the silver tray with a linen napkin and a crystal glass of water. He didn't speak. He knew that in moments like these, silence was the only appropriate currency. When the doors slid open on the 50th floor, the air changed. It was no longer the humid, frenetic energy of a party gone wrong. It was cool, sterile, and smelled of lemon oil and old paper. This was the executive level, the heart of the beast. Elena stepped out. Her black silk dress, which had looked like a costume of vengeance in the ballroom, now looked like a uniform of war against the stark white marble of the hallway. The double doors to the boardroom were closed. Elena paused in front of them. She reached out and touched the brass handle. It was cold. "My grandfather used to say that this room was where souls were weighed." Elena whispered more to herself than to Laurent. "He said if you walked in here and didn't feel afraid, you were either a fool or a sociopath." "And what do you feel, madame?" Laurent asked gently. Elena tightened her grip on the handle. "I feel necessary." She pushed the doors open. The room was vast. A 30-foot table made of reclaimed walnut dominated the space. The walls were lined with portraits of past executives, stern men with mutton chops and pocket watches. At the far end, the largest portrait hung Arthur Sterling, her grandfather. Around the table, 12 men sat in various states of distress. These were the board of directors, men who controlled billions of dollars in assets, men who could topple governments with a phone call. When Elena entered, they scrambled to stand up. Chairs scraped loudly against the floor. It was a clumsy, panicked gesture, the kind schoolboys make when the headmaster catches them smoking. Elena didn't look at them. She walked straight to the head of the table. The chair there was empty. It had been Marcus's chair for 7 years. Before that, it was Arthur's. She didn't sit immediately. She stood behind the high leather back, running her hand along the stitching. "Please," she said, her voice soft but cutting through the silence like a razor. "Sit." They sat. "Mr. Henderson." Elena nodded to the chairman, who looked weary and old. Ms. Sterling." Henderson began, his voice raspy. "What happened downstairs? It was regrettable. We had no idea Marcus was engaged in criminal activity. We were blind." "Blind." Elena repeated the word, tasting it. She walked slowly around the table, her heels sinking into the plush carpet. "Blindness is a medical condition, Mr. Henderson. What you were was negligent." She stopped behind the chair of a man named Simon Vance, a distant cousin and the CFO of the company. He was sweating profusely. He kept glancing at his phone, presumably checking the plummeting stock prices. "Simon," Elena said. She rested a hand on his shoulder. He jumped, as if he'd been burned. "You signed the quarterly audits. You approved the transfers to JM Consulting. Did you check the tax ID numbers? Did you verify the services rendered?" Marcus assured me it was a retention strategy for external branding," Simon stammered, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "I trusted the CEO. You trusted him because he promised you a seat on the board of the new company after the merger with Omni Group," Elena said. The room went deathly silent. Simon turned pale. How did you know that?" Elena smiled. She walked back to the head of the table and finally sat down. She didn't slouch. She occupied the space with a terrifying grace. "I know because I am the one who processes the server backups, Simon." She lied smoothly. She didn't process them, but she paid the people who did. "I know that 3 of you in this room were aware of Project Vulture. You were going to let Marcus sell my grandfather's hotels for scrap, take your golden parachutes, and retire to the Hamptons." She let the accusation hang in the air. "But that's not why we are here right now." Elena continued, leaning forward, her diamond necklace catching the harsh fluorescent light. "We are here to discuss the assets." "The assets are frozen," Henderson said. "With the FBI investigation." "The company assets are frozen," Elena corrected. "But the private assets held by the Sterling Trust are not. And there is one asset in particular I want to discuss." She slid a folder across the long table. It spun on the polished wood and came to a stop in front of a man named Gerald Thorne. Gerald was Marcus's uncle. He was a small, petty man who had been given a meaningless position on the board simply because of nepotism. He had been the one who told Elena at her own wedding that she was punching up by marrying Marcus. "Open it, Gerald," Elena commanded. Gerald, shaking hands, opened the folder. Inside was a property deed and a lease agreement. "The Rosewood Estate in Connecticut," Elena said. "Current resident Mrs. Catherine Thorne, Marcus's mother, your sister-in-law." Gerald swallowed hard. "Yes, it's the family home. Marcus bought it for her 5 years ago." "Correction," Elena said sharply. "The Sterling Trust bought it. Marcus listed it as a corporate retreat to avoid taxes. He moved his mother in and charged her a rent of $1 per year." Elena leaned back, crossing her arms. "Catherine Thorne. The woman who told me to my face that I had peasant hands. The woman who inspected my dusting when she visited. The woman who told Marcus he should have married a debutante. Elena picked up a heavy fountain pen from the desk Marcus's pen. Technically, Elena said, since the lease was fraudulent and the property is being used for non-corporate purposes, the tenant is trespassing. You can't mean to evict her, Gerald gasped. She's 70 years old. She's frail. She seemed quite energetic when she was rearranging my kitchen furniture last Christmas without asking, Elena noted dryly. And don't worry, Gerald, I'm not heartless. I won't throw her on the street. Elena scribbled something on a notepad and ripped the page out. She slid it toward Gerald. This is the address of one of our properties in Queens. It's a studio apartment, 4th floor walk-up. It's near a very nice bus route. I'm authorizing a transfer of her lease to this unit, effective immediately. Queens. Gerald looked at the paper in horror. Catherine has never taken a bus in her life. This will kill her. Then she better learn to adapt, Elena said, her eyes hardening into flint. I adapted. I lived in the shadow of your family's arrogance for 7 years. I let you all treat me like a ghost in my own house. Well, gentlemen, the ghost has materialized. And she is cleaning house. She turned her gaze to the rest of the board. Simon Vance, Gerald Thorne, and you, Mr. Peters. She pointed to another member. You are removed from the board effective immediately. Your security clearance is revoked. You will leave your phones and laptops on the table. Security will escort you out. You can't do that, Simon shouted, standing up. We have contracts. We have tenure. Read the bylaws, Elena said calmly. Section 4, paragraph 2. The trustee reserves the right to dissolve the board in times of gross moral turpitude or fiduciary failure. You failed, Simon. You all failed. She pressed a button on the intercom system built into the table. Mr. Graves, you may come in. The doors opened and the massive head of security entered, flanked by 4 guards. They weren't smiling. Escort these gentlemen to the lobby, Elena said, not even looking at the men she was firing, and ensure they take nothing but their coats. As the 3 men were led out shouting protests that echoed uselessly in the hallway, the room felt suddenly spacious. Only Henderson and 4 other board members remained, the ones who had been kept in the dark, the ones who were merely incompetent, not malicious. They looked at Elena with a mixture of awe and terror. The door closed again. Silence returned. Just then the service door at the back of the room opened. A waiter entered with a silver cloche. He placed it in front of Elena. She lifted the lid. Underneath, sitting on fine china, was a greasy, delicious-looking double cheeseburger with a side of fries. The smell of fried onions and beef filled the serious, sterile room. Elena picked up the burger. Grease shined on her fingers, fingers that wore a diamond worth $3 million. She took a bite. She chewed slowly, savoring the taste, savoring the silence, savoring the absolute power she now held. She swallowed and looked at Mr. Henderson. Now, she said, wiping the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin, let's talk about the rebranding. I'm thinking we go back to the original name. Sterling Global. What do you think? Henderson blinked. He looked at the burger, then at the woman who had just decapitated the leadership of a Fortune 500 company in under 10 minutes. I think, Henderson stammered, a slow smile spreading across his face. I think that sounds perfect, Madam Chairman. Elena took another bite. But the night wasn't over. Her phone buzzed on the table. It wasn't a text. It was a call. The caller ID read New York City Department of Corrections. Elena stared at the screen. Marcus was using his one phone call. She let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. The men in the room watched the phone as if it were a bomb. Elena reached out. She pressed the decline button. Then she opened her contacts, found the number, and blocked it. Let him call his mother, Elena said to the room. I hear she's going to have a lot of free time on her hands. She stood up. Meeting adjourned. I have a company to save. 6 months later, the winter snow had turned into spring rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the CEO's office at Sterling Global. The room no longer smelled of Marcus's heavy musk cologne or the stale smoke of cigars. It smelled of fresh orchids and sea salt. The dark, oppressive mahogany furniture was gone, replaced by sleek modern glass and cream leather. It was a workspace, not a man cave. Elena sat at the desk. The city of Manhattan sprawled out beneath her like a circuit board of light. The papers, Ms. Sterling. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca, slid a document across the glass surface. It was the final divorce decree. Elena picked up the pen. It wasn't Marcus's heavy gold fountain pen. She had donated that to a charity auction where it sold for a surprisingly low price. This was a simple, reliable ballpoint. She signed her name, Elena Sterling. The thorn was gone, erased, as if it had never existed. "How did he take the news?" Elena asked without looking up. "Not well," Rebecca replied, tucking the file away. "The sentencing hearing is tomorrow, but the plea deal is off the table. With the evidence you provided regarding the offshore accounts, the district attorney is asking for 12 years. Minimum." Elena nodded slowly. 12 years. Marcus would be 54 when he got out. He would be broke, bald, and branded a felon. The business world has a short memory for success, but a long memory for scandal. He would never run a lemonade stand again, let alone a hotel. "And the others?" Elena asked, walking to the window. "Jessica Miller is currently working as a hostess at a chain restaurant in New Jersey," Rebecca reported with professional detachment. "Her wages are being garnished to repay the $40,000 in stolen company assets. She is not popular on social media anymore." Elena watched a yellow taxi navigate the wet streets far below. She thought of Jessica, who had once sneered at Elena's vintage clothes, now wearing a polyester uniform that smelled of grease. It wasn't vengeance, it was gravity. What goes up without foundation must come down. "And Catherine, Mrs. Thorne, is adjusting," Rebecca said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "The building manager in Queens reports that she calls the police every time her neighbors cook with exotic spices. But she's paying her rent. She even took the bus to the grocery store last week." Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The weight that had sat on her chest for 7 years, the constant criticism, the feeling of being small, the fear of confrontation was gone. She turned back to the room. It was empty of enemies. She walked over to the small bar in the corner. She didn't pour champagne. She poured a glass of sparkling water with a twist of lemon. She raised the glass to the reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the invisible wife. She was the matriarch. She was the CEO. She was free. "Meeting with the Tokyo investors in 10 minutes, Ms. Sterling." Her assistant buzzed over the intercom. Elena set the glass down. She straightened her blazer, a sharp, custom-tailored piece that cost more than Marcus's car. "Send them in," she said. The door opened. The future walked in, and Elena Sterling was ready to own it. And that is the story of how the invisible wife turned the tables on the husband who underestimated her. Marcus thought he was the king because he sat on the throne, but he forgot to check who owned the castle. In the end, silence wasn't weakness. It was a strategy. What do you think? Did Marcus deserve a longer sentence? Was Elena too hard on the mother-in-law, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your theories. If you enjoyed this story of dramatic betrayal and satisfying karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the next juicy story. We have a brand new tale coming next week about a billionaire who poses as a janitor to find true love. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening, and remember, be careful who you step on your way up. You might meet them on your way down.